What's up, you guys? I'm Chibi Joe, and I'm here with another improv movie review. This time, we're reviewing Brightburn. This movie is not great. It's very cliche, it's very cheesy, very over the top, but I loved it. The special effects were well done, and it was a pretty interesting twist to the Superman origin story of a kid sent from space, adopted by human parents. He finds out he has powers, except in this case, he decides to try to take over the world rather than save it, like Superman did. So, at the beginning of the movie, it goes to a couple. They're about to have sex, because they've been trying to have a baby for a while, and they just haven't. All of a sudden, huge crash, power goes out, and then it goes through like old home videos of this kid named Brandon growing up. And then it goes to a fast forward to 10 years, and the mom is looking for Brandon, and she whistles, and she hears him whistle back. She's like, "You better not be in the barn." And so they go to the barn, and something that made both me and Nick jump was whenever he pops out and scares her. And she walks the boy out, and they're laughing, they're having a good time, all that stuff. And the dad shows up. He says, "Was you in the barn?" And he's like, and she was like, "Oh, he was only there for like 2 seconds." She's like, "Well, you need to be careful. All those boards and nails and stuff, like normal parent stuff." I thought that was really nice. Like, that actually seems like something my family would tell me if we had like a old rusty barn. And so like they're going on, going through all that stuff, and I'm trying to think of like when things happen, because there's a lot of stuff that happened that, I'll be honest, I don't really remember, because like a whole lot of nothing happened in this movie. Just being completely honest, like there's a lot of moments at the beginning of the movie that really did not matter. It was just setting up the world, setting up these characters, who they are and stuff like that. So like I guess I'll fast forward to when the weird stuff started happening. So the mom was in her little studio. She was painting and was listening to music, when all of a sudden it goes to the bar, and he starts seeing like below the floorboards this thing turning red, and like there's like these like whispers and like this different language being spoken. Meanwhile, the boy's asleep, Brandon's asleep, and he starts like thrashing. I mean, like full on seizure. And like the mom hears it. She's like, "Oh gosh, what's that?" She didn't go to it though, because it stopped. All of a sudden, he kind of goes into like a weird trance thing and jumps out of the window, and he starts heading towards the barn. Mom hears this, and she starts kind of getting up, and she's like, "Well, it's no big deal." But then she's hearing like banging, and she goes to the barn, and it's the boy trying to open up this trap door where all this red is coming through, and she like gets him away from it, and next morning comes in, all is good. she lies to the dad, just saying, "Oh, he was just wandering downstairs. It's all good." And he the whole next morning, everything's fine. Um, the boy is about to mow the lawn, and when he pulls the cord, it like the lawnmower, because he's getting mad at it because it's not turning on, and it just like flies away, and it's on now. He did succeed in actually turning it on, but he puts his hand in the blade, and luckily he doesn't just have super strength, he's also very durable, because it would have been really bad if you found out, oh shit, I only have strength, not durability. And yeah, the blade of the lawnmower is like completely destroyed. I kind of wish they showed a scene whenever the dad's like, what the fuck happened to the lawnmower? Then like, I don't know, it started getting really, like, his entire personality like immediately changed. He's more bratty now. Like, he was a pretty good-natured kid up until this point. And so like they're at his birthday party, and he's like, because he's like 12 years old, and they're like, he's like, this is for kids, like the little ice cream with a candle in it or whatever. And he, like, the dad, the uncle, I think his name was Noah, hands him a gun. He's like, I shot my first buck with this kind of model. And the dad's like, no guns, you're still a kid. Which is pretty basic stuff. I can understand the kid's frustration, because I'd probably, if I was given a present and my dad or my mom said, you know, you're not old enough for this, I'd be upset too. And so the kid kind of becomes bratty. And like, while he's getting angrier and more frustrated, like the power's flickering, all that stuff. Kid gets sent home. You know, they go home. And again, starts getting even weirder, because like the dad's there late at night, and he's hearing the chickens go wild. And he's just like staring, like he goes outside and sees Brandon just staring at the chickens. And like Brandon's not even paying attention to him. He's like, Brandon, you okay, bud? You okay, Bubba? And Brandon's like, yeah, I was okay. And then just walks back to the house. Next morning, he wakes up, the dad wakes up to see just all the chickens, like, killed, not even, like, eaten. Because, he thinks it's the wolf the night before, and then he sees Brandon, and then sees this. And then he mentions it to his wife the night before. He's like, you know, he was just staring at the chickens. It was so weird. And his wife is like, yeah, I kind of maybe fibbed a little bit. Brandon was the one. Brandon was trying to open up the barn door as if he was drawn to it. And so, like, he was talking about Brandon may look like us, but he's not us. You know, he's never bled. He's never been cut. He's never been hurt. And, yeah, so, like, next day comes around. He's at school. And they're doing this, like, trust thing when, like, you're being knocked around, like, being, like, gently pushed. I've never had to do it before. I don't know how good of an exercise it is, because I feel like I would, if I got pushed a little bit too hard, I'm going to, like, throw punches. At least when I was a younger kid, like, grade school. Like, if I was, like, around 12, I was a pretty angry kid at, you know, in 12 to 14, so I probably would have, like, decked someone if they would have pushed just a little bit too hard where I wasn't too happy with how hard I was pushed. Anyways, oh shit, I totally forgot an entire scene. So they go camping before this scene. They go camping. The dad and him have the talk after they find porn with some gruesome pictures of innards. And so him and the dad have the talk. He's like, you're going to have these urges towards women. It's okay to, basically, he's like telling him it's okay to masturbate. Well, the boy didn't take it as that because the dad was so bad at talking and conveying information that the boy didn't understand, and he has superpowers. So late at night, he hurries up, goes to this one girl of his class's room, and she's like freaking out, and the mother sees like no one there, and she's like, well, who did you see? And it was Brandon Breyer, whatever his last name was. And like then all of a sudden she's like, oh man, it could have been him. Even though like they didn't know he had superpowers at this time. So they're all like, how could it have been him? And so I don't know. It was a really dumb scene because she's just like, oh man, it could have been him. It's like, you was watching the window and you were by the door. Like, I understand he has superpowers, but at this time, he no one knows that. So then the school scene comes in, and she's thinking he's a pervert. Which he was, but superpowers. And so like whenever he's pushed towards her, she moves out of the way, and he hits his head really hard. And she like tells the teacher he's a pervert. And the teacher's like, help him up or else you're going to fail the class. And so she like tries to help him up, and then he like crushes the crap out of her hand. Just full on, just destroyed hand. The mother of the girl gets really mad at the parents of Brandon, and she like starts accusing like, where were you at this date? And they're like, we were 30 miles away or 20 miles away. He could not have done that, which he did, but again, superpowers. And like it was just so it was really dumb. It's like you're trying to present this kid as something that, as far as they knew at the time, was an impossibility. There was no way he could have escaped that room without superpowers. You would have seen him. Or you would have heard him or something. Anyways, he's getting more messages from the pod, the little space pod that he came in. And eventually it tells him to take the world. His eyes glow red. And I guess he shoots lasers. I guess that's what they were trying to say. Like he shoots his first heat vision. He's been drawing like these symbols. Like, and it's like a BB, but like inverted. And really cool design. I always love like that kind of line work. So like the mom sees it, and like he gets like kind of really protective over it, like, don't look at my sketches, which again, 12 years old, that's kind of normal. He would have at least said something to his mom, but of course he was mentally going through quite a bit. So he So like eventually he like opens up the bar door, like he breaks the chains, he opens up the trap door, and his mom sees him floating, and like he falls and like cuts his hand on the space pod, which makes a lot of sense that like their metal on that planet would be able to cut their skin just like metal can cut through our skin. And so like the kid's like panicking because he's never had an injury before. Like, it cut me. I love that line. It cut me. Like this horrified idea of, oh my god, I'm injured. And so he like, what am I? What is this? You know, and the mom tells him a more romantic version of the story. And the like meanwhile like the dad like in another scene is like, you know, he broke a girl's hand. He's not like us. And so like you know, he says to take the world, and he goes back to the girl's house who is in like a full arm cast. And she's like, Mom told me never to talk to you. And he's like, don't worry, I'll take care of this. And so he ends up going to this diner where she works at and just killing her. I mean, like killing the mom of this girl, like just brutally. And yeah, like shatters like a light fixture. All this glass goes like straight into her eyes. She then hides in the freezer, and he like rips open the door, and you don't even see what happens to her at that time. You just know it's brutal. And like he takes the body away because like the next scene is like the cops and stuff all over there, and like they're like, did you get anything out of the girl? And they're like, nothing coherent. You know, the girl's just in super shock. And that's the last time you ever hear about this girl. And so like then they like he like breathes on the glass window of the diner, and he's like, oh, what's this? And it's the BB symbol, which is why I brought it up here, because where it was located in the movie, I thought was really good, that it was like early enough, and then it's a callback to that. A lot of movies I watch, whenever something will become important, it's like 2 minutes after. Like 2 minutes after this idea is debuted. So, yeah, kills her, and then is in counseling with his aunt. His aunt's his school counselor, and she's like, do you regret what you did to the girl? And he's like, you know, I like all these like really like sociopathic phrasings. And she's like, honey, I'm gonna have to tell the police the truth. I can't go easy on you just because you're my nephew. And so later that night, she's alone. Her husband, I'm assuming it's her husband, is at the bar with Brandon's dad, and they're all just hanging out and playing pool and all that stuff. And he's like, I gotta head home. And the guys are like, oh, come on. He's like, no, I don't want to be yelled at. And so like, but at the time, the Brandon is at her house, is at the house with the aunt. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll walk back. And so like, you think he's gonna kill the aunt throughout this entire scene, but he doesn't. Noah ends up finding him, dragging him out of the house, and says, get in the car, Brandon. Brandon hits him with like a heat vision, but it's not like strong enough. I guess he's not like practiced enough with it, I'm guessing. And basically just launches Uncle Noah into the garage, and he's like, okay, I'm done. and starts driving away, trying to get away from Brandon, and Brandon like keeps catching up to him, and he ends up like wrecking the truck completely, and like Noah's face went into the steering wheel, like dislocating his jaw, and then he eventually dies. And then Brandon writes the BB in blood. Meanwhile, the sheriff is looking at the pictures of the wreck and notices the exact same symbol on the road as was in the diner. And so they tell Brandon, the parents tell Brandon that his Uncle Noah died, and Brandon just could not give two shits. And the dad like freaks out and says, tell us the truth. You were there. You killed him. We know it was you. And Brandon like pushes the dad back into like a bunch, like into the wall, like breaking stuff. And the dad pulls out the shirt. Like while the boy's in the shower, he grabs the shirt from his room that Brandon was wearing whenever he killed Noah, and it was just covered in blood. And like he's trying to convince his wife. He's like, we know it was him. This is Noah's blood. And she's like, it could be from anything. Like, it was a really dumb scene. She's like completely in denial that her son's a murderer. And it's like, all the evidence points there. And she's like, I can't believe you. It's like, and then it goes into like a really sad scene of the dad's going through all of these pictures and like these arts and craft project that Brandon had made for him. And he tells the wife, hey, I'll take Brandon camping. Well, so they go camping. And when Brandon's looking at tracks, he's like, yeah, there's probably more than one deer, all this stuff. He's actually enjoying himself. The dad puts a bullet into the chamber of the rifle and goes to shoot Brandon. And when he shoots Brandon, it's completely ineffective. And Brandon ends up basically heat visioning his brains out. And so, before this, just a little bit before this, like kind of the same time, but it was like going back and forth. Sheriff shows up at the house and he's like, is your son home? She's like, no, they went camping actually. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Can I ask you a few questions? Have you seen this symbol before? Well, it's the BB. And she has seen it before. And she's like, I don't think so. She's like, well, doesn't it kind of look like a BB for Brandon Breyer? And she's like, I don't think so. He's like, well, mind if I come in the house and check? And she's like, actually, I do mind. I think you should go. And he's like, okay, just know that I may be back. And she's like, okay. She immediately goes into Brandon's room, finds the notebook, and like not only does it have the BB symbol, but it also has like imagery from when the glass went into the lady's eyes, from Noah's death. And so she calls the phone. I think his name was Kyle. And she said, you're right, he murdered them. He killed Noah. He killed, I can't remember her name, Cheryl. I'm going to call her Cheryl just to have a name there. He murdered them. He killed them. And then you hear Brandon's voice on their end. He's like, Mom. And she's like, where's Dad? And she's like, he's gone. And she's like, gone where? And he's like, you know where. In other words, I killed him. And so Mom's like, where are you at? I'm home, Mom. and just chaos throughout the house. She calls 911. Doesn't work though, because like she's screaming and then the line went dead. And so the sheriff and another officer show up, and like the sheriff immediately dies. Like she's like, I'm right here, and she's like, no, you gotta leave, it's not safe. And the sheriff's like, what do you mean? And then all of a sudden Brandon comes like flinging through, and just like the guy just splatters from the velocity. And then the other police officer ends up dying. And the mom's like, wait, he got cut by the ship. And so she's like trying to get to the barn. And you get this really cool shot whenever she's running to the barn, that whenever Brandon like explodes out of the house, that scene looks so good to me. I'm like, that's the best looking scene in the movie. Another really good scene is whenever the dad was running away from Brandon. You see Brandon like flying behind him. I don't know why Brandon was like swooping like a fly instead of more of straightforward chasing him. I guess it was like to add fear to his dad. But yeah. Brandon ends up like getting a piece of the ship and putting it in her pocket, and Brandon just stops there, and she pulls off the mask. He's like, I want to do good, Mom. I want to do good. She's like, I know you do, and you will. And she goes to stab him, and he catches the arm, and he's horrified that the last person he felt should love him betrayed him. And he like just gets so mad, and he just grabs her and goes straight up as high as he can go, and then just lets go. And he watches her fall, and then like a plane starts flying in, and the next scene is a news report talking about a plane fell today in Brightburn, Kansas. We're still trying to figure out why it just sort of dropped, and the only survivor is the son of Kyle and Barbara. We'll go with Barbara. And that's where the movie ends. There is also this scene whenever she goes to the space pod and she turns around because the light's flashing over there, and she turns around and you see the body of the lady from the diner, and like just her entire abdomen is like ripped open, and it was such an intense scene. I'm like, oh God. And yeah, I enjoyed this movie. It's just a brutal, over the top, everyone dies sort of storytelling. A whole lot of fun. I do recommend seeing it, even though I've now spoiled the entire movie for you. I do recommend seeing it though, because it's a blast. Like I said, it's not a good movie. Like, it's not going to win any awards or anything like that, but it was a lot of fun. Well, that's all you guys today. So please like this video, comment, like, and subscribe. And guys, I'll see you next time. Oh, I had a burp. Have an awesome day and a good night.